Everybody, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. For those of you who have been to my LinkedIn Lives before, you know that in the beginning, I'm always looking down at my phone to see if we really are live. Good, I just got a notification, Ashley, I don't know about you, that says that
I
we're
did
live,
too.
so that's good. And then it also said we're having issues loading this event, so that's bad. That's okay. We're here. We're here. So whether you're here live or you're watching the replay, hi, Talisha. So happy you're here. Welcome. This is Ashley and I were just talking about how, in our own personal journeys with AI, generative AI, responsible AI, we have had these moments of just massive acceleration where you have an idea and you know that there's a there. And you don't even need to know how to get from point A to B to C to D. You can just start grooving, and how it's so tempting to just go all out before you set up something like a governance framework, if you're in an enterprise example. And this show is actually like that. I decided that I was going to have a show and it was going to be on Thursdays and we were going to talk about AI governance. And then I used all of my, AI wizardry and spun it up, and here we are. So those of you who are here, thank you for joining. This is a little bit of an experiment, just like every AI thing, where we're building the plane while we're flying it. So I wanted to launch, even before introing Ashley and her background, asking you to share how your experience of having an idea, knowing there's a there, and just taking it from 0 to 60 in 10 days?
Yes. Thank you for having me, first and foremost. So I would say from ideation to forming, yes, it was quite literally 10 days. And I used AI tools to do this. I did not replace my thinking with AI tools, although that sounds very fun to do. And I would love to do that at some point in time. But really, what it came down to was my biggest audience was on LinkedIn. And so I started dabbling around in LinkedIn and fun fact, 4.2 million people are open to work on LinkedIn. And out of that 4.21 million, 1.1 million are using LinkedIn premium services and looking for work. And that's a ton of people paying, I don't even know what LinkedIn premium is these days, like $40, $50 for just to be on a platform and be able to have all of the features that LinkedIn Premium offers in order to get a job. And so I started thinking, okay, how can we help those 1.1 and even better, 4.2 million people out there?
Yes.
And so what I did was, there is a CRM called Octopus. It is an AI feature. And I have used it for quite a while. It's not for everyone, but it worked for me. And what I did was I sent 1,000 people open to work connection requests on LinkedIn every single week for 4 weeks. And I just did that to see, if these people were real, if they were actually engaging, if they, maybe they put their open to work circle on and then completely forgot about it and then never logged on LinkedIn. So I kind of just wanted to test it because I had a hard time thinking that 1.1 million people were looking for work and also paying $50 a month. I just wanted to dig that, start peeling back the onion layers a little bit on that and see if that was a real statistic or not. And it was very real. People, I was interacting with them, asking them, what kind of jobs they were looking for and have they tried this job board. And so just engaging with those types of profiles, and come to find out every single one of them were interested in AI. They didn't know where to start. They were very cautious because of the media. They didn't know who they could trust. They were not doing the buddy system. They very much felt like if they asked a question about AI, they'd be almost shamed, I guess. And so I just started thinking, okay, how can I, what is the business need here? And I thought accessibility for sure, because if we don't get a ton of people into AI and make it accessible, it's not for everyone. And the gap is just going to increase as we go. And we're going very, very fast. I'm sure by the time this talk comes out and saved, whatever I say will be irrelevant.
Totally.
So I was like, okay, it needs to be affordable, it needs to be accessible, and it needs to have a community feel. I'm a very big supporter and believer in community-based products and services.
Mhm.
So I thought, okay, I'm going to make a subscription because maybe those people don't want to commit to a year of a product. And that's totally fair. Like if you're looking for work, you have to be tight on your money. So I came up with a subscription based community and it's $20 a month. People can join and exit whenever they want. There's no hidden
Mhm.
areas that say, like, once you sign up, you're locked in. There's no lock in. And the community has 3 events per week. It's everything from an Ask Me Anything session with a founder of a generative AI app to Weird Wednesday, where I bring in a creator that's doing something weird and unique with AI in order to just kind of like get people excited about it. And then on top of those 3 weekly events, I also have a weekly podcast that is just for the members of this community. And they get to come on and hear a different generative AI vendor every single week. They get to hear about the founders, the mission, the values, the ethics behind the tools, all of the
Yes.
hard questions that I asked in my previous jobs. Those will be asked these vendors. And then everybody in the community gets to listen and see if this is the company that they want to try out on their own after learning about them. And they get a free trial for 7 days to the tool. So if you can imagine the tech stack and the amount of money it costs right now to try tools on your own, it's very hefty. If you join this community, it's just $20 a month and you'll be able to try
Yes.
4 tools every single month.
Okay, there is so much juicy goodness in there. I dropped the URL for Ashley's community into the chat, and it's pinned here. Um,
Yes. It opens
tell
May
me,
1st, so get
yeah,
on the
I was
wait
gonna
list.
say, tell me when does it start? And by the way, folks, we're going to dig into some deep conversation about the nooks and crannies of AI governance in addition, but I wanted to be sure that you know about what Ashley's launching, because one of the things that drew me to her immediately was our shared belief in community and her, like, the framework that she has set up, the extraordinary value. I can tell you just from even being in like close relationships with lots of vendors and having the ability to get, on the inside whenever we feel like it and talk to founders when we feel like it and whatever, like that task of evaluating vendors alone is well worth $20 a month for however many people in your organization. If it's
There's
you
no
who has
cap.
to make the decisions by yourself, try to drag someone else in there so it's not all on you. But this is a massive asset that she's put together. So
Thank
um,
you.
thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I just thought there was a big need for a neutral party to just be there and make, like, 3 aspects of this were really important to me. I wanted it to be inclusive, supportive, and trust. So I thought, okay, I don't want to, put all my cards into one generative AI vendor because they're popping up every single day. And I think even if they're great from the get-go, having to evolve their product to continue to meet the needs for everyone is going to be a challenge. And so I don't want to be loyal to just one vendor because that means that I'm saying, like, okay, I have my full faith in you all the time to always do the right thing. And I just don't think that that is possible right now with how many AI vendors there are. So it's really just a community to make it fun and supportive. And I do all the work for you. Like, I vet them for you. So you just have to join and observe and test what feels right to you. That's quite literally all you have to do.
okay. What I want to do now is really quickly, I want to introduce myself and I want to ask Ashley a question about what she just shared. And then, Ashley, I want you to introduce like where you've been, where your head's at with AI so far. But because one of the things that you just brought up is so incredibly important to me, with first just the trust building that's required between the folks with budget authority and the tech vendors, and the inexperience that all of us have in evaluating vendors. We don't know the questions to ask. And my concern is that in the nonprofit sector, there's a narrative about um, maybe, and with all due respect to any vendors, including myself and you out there, anyone who's selling anything into the social impact sector, there is a narrative, of course, of like, are we being predatory? Right? Because a lot of times folks are coming to us and they are pretty desperate. There's something that has gone awry, or the board is saying we need it now, or the executive director is saying we have to have it, or something has already gone wrong. It's something that we might only do 1 or 2 times in our whole entire career, right? If we're in a small organization, we may be involved with hiring tech vendors a couple of times, but also we may not be. We may not even know what are we supposed to be paying attention to? Um, and this is one of the things that I've been really focused on. I'm Ann Murphy. Our company is Empowered Fundraiser, coaching, consulting, and responsible AI. And in the last year or so, like so many of us, have just become obsessed with everything related to responsible AI and leaning into really how it impacts my own area of expertise. That said, I don't know about you, Ashley, but like when people say to me, who's your ideal client? It's really about their readiness and their mindset, so much more than the, exact like granular details of the vertical that they're in and the use case that they're aiming for. It's pretty much a version of the same 5 use cases that get the most return on investment. But I'm learning all of this, as I go, and I'm implementing it with clients. But the thing that I realized about partway through last year was that, we're doing all this upskilling because people are coming to us and they need upskilling. And that's like, okay, super lots of dopamine, really exciting. We've trained 2,200 fundraisers in how to use responsible AI. That feels like a life accomplishment for me. And I'm never going to stop teaching people for free. Meanwhile, it dawned on me that I've now put 2,200 fundraisers out into the world, not knowing if they have any governance in place for themselves, let alone at the enterprise level. So that's kind of the transition here for me of bringing more awareness into the governance piece. I sit on the advisory board of Fundraising AI. We launched the framework for responsible AI in fundraising. And in fact, we have our second inaugural conference coming up on October 1st, I believe, fundraising.ai. They're out there. And through all of this, of course, Ashley and I are both in multiple AI communities. And I came across her when she was speaking at the Writers Conference hosted by the Marketing AI Institute with Paul Rutzer, Mike Kaput, and Kathy McPhillips. And you were talking about, I think, using Jasper.
Yes.
Yes, you were talking about using Jasper, and I was immediately impressed, and just wanted to bring her into, my, nonprofit community to share her insights on governance and doing things specifically like choosing a vendor. So that's me. And the thing in the corner, thank you for whoever already clicked it. The thing that says responsible AI. I do know how to spell the word responsible, but it only allows me a certain number of letters. That is our deck to what my company offers with AI consulting and upskilling. So, Ashley, tell the people who you are and what you've been up to.
Hi. My name's Ashley, obviously. My experience with AI started in 2020. I started using generative AI, specifically Jasper. And I was using it strictly for productivity and efficiency. And to be completely honest, I think my first use case was I hated rereading my emails. And I was like, I think I'm reading, like, I think my tone's wrong. I think that this is coming off the wrong way. It was like a little bit of imposter syndrome. So it was not, I didn't go into using this tool like I'm going to use this for everything. I just really wanted to fix one specific thing. And then as I learned more about the tool, I added some more use cases on top of that. Fast forward, then I started becoming, or I was a product marketing manager for an AI company with an AI feature. And then I worked for an enterprise marketing company and rolled out multiple generative AI vendors per use case. And really, I mean, it's funny to me because like I said, I've been using AI since 2020, and I didn't talk about using it because there was this like taboo notion of if you're using AI, you're not actually working. And so I like kept it very on the down low that I knew how to use generative AI and what I was doing it for in these use cases. Because it was kind of like, it felt like a dirty secret that you weren't supposed to tell anyone. And so I went to MACON last year just as an attendee. And that was the first time where I was surrounded by so many AI enthusiasts. And I mean, Paul, Mike, Kathy, like the whole crew just do an incredible job about making it so inclusive and supportive. But I attended and I was excited with all these other people. And then I realized like it's no longer this little secret that you're using AI. It's actually a skill set. So I was like, okay, I think it's safe to start talking about this now because it's becoming a little bit more normalized. And then full, 180 moment now. I'm coming back to MayCon, but as a speaker, and I'm launching this community on May 1st. And I really just, throughout my experiences using generative AI, I've seen the importance of finding out what problem you are going to try to solve for and then finding AI solutions
Mm.
and rapidly getting to the point where you can actually start to vet these vendors and these LLMs for the specific use cases that you want. I've learned so much, and I've saw that a lot of voices were, being missed out on, and we were not including everyone. We weren't explaining things. And I just thought, okay, we're going to go back to the basics now. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more because there's definitely value in pausing and going back to the foundation of AI.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at.
I'm so with you. I reached a point in the last couple of weeks where I was like, okay, it's back to basics time. It's back to basics because was it like 2 weeks ago where there was just like an onslaught of new tools? Maybe it was 3 weeks ago, where my brain just melted. And I thought, okay, and you and I we'll talk about the platforms we prefer, but I realized like I need to go back to the basics, pay attention to how I'm using these tools, what I actually have trained myself on well enough to know, do I actually need another tool? Or am I going for the bright and shiny new object? Because I've done both and I have lots of
Yes.
subscriptions. I have,
Yes.
I love a free trial, which is never free for me because I
No.
never ever cancel it on time.
Same. No,
Love
I'm
a free,
smiling because I'm the same exact way.
we have to go through our through our subscriptions like every 2 months for the things that Anne forgets to cancel. But I keep going back. And so I wanted to throw this out there. Like for me, I've gone back to all of the OpenAI tools again and again after going out and starting to get really entrenched in some of the other tools. And then I'll come back. And right now, like the last few days, ChatGPT has been so lazy and my results have been so horrific. And I've been doing demos and it's sending me all the vanilla content with all the unlock, unleash, beacon, change maker, all those words. So it's prompted me to go back out into all the other
Well,
tools I subscribe. So talk to me, Ashley. What platforms do you prefer? And what are what are some of your criteria for deciding what platform you personally are going to work in? And then let's let that launch us into conversation about how you recommend that people do this for themselves and their enterprises.
yes. Okay. Let me try and tackle that. Like, where do I start?
First step is, how do you decide what platform you personally are going to work in?
Okay. So I do a ton of research. I just by default, rolling different tools out to over 100 marketers, I learned to get really good about asking the questions. So I'm sure, if any listeners are out there and you work for, an enterprise company, you are responsible for the tools that you roll out, and you need to be very confident in what they can and cannot do. And essentially, you are taking ownership of those tools. So if they mess up, if they put your company at risk, you are responsible for that. And that sounds really scary, but it's also a great way of applying some pressure to yourself as a user to really dig and find those answers. So before, rolling this out to my marketing team, or the marketing team I worked for, I mean, I never looked at an SEC agreement. I did not look at where data was stored. GDPR was just kind of like something in the wind that I knew existed, but I didn't exactly know, like, if it's this, then it's yes. If it's that, then it's no. So some of the questions, I guess, that I can kind of get into to start with on why I choose specific vendors and how is like, if you look at data foundation, what type of data is the AI model trained on? Like that specific application, because they're all very, very different. Is the data primarily public domain, proprietary? Is it a mix? Because this impacts not only potential biases and output types, but also like the user's learning experience for them. The explainability. So like, what's a good one for explainability? Can the AI's decision-making processes be explained, like even partially? Because it's one thing, again, for you to understand that, but if you're responsible for other people's experiences, you need to be able to explain the AI's decision-making process. It's kind of like that game of telephone. You
Right.
don't really have like the option of mistaking what it's saying to you. Um,
Right.
and I can kind of stop there. I can keep going into questions. It's totally up to you. There's a lot. I ask a lot of
Yeah.
questions because I
So
think it's important.
here's what I'm going to do. We're just going to do this live. I am going to route for folks while we're on the call some of the consider asking
Okay.
as they're thinking about a vendor. How about that? Let's see.
I
One
love
sec
that.
here. Cool.
Yes, absolutely.
Is it questions to ask ourselves or questions to ask a vendor?
A vendor.
Okay. All right. Talk to us.
So I'd say, how's your data stored and secured? More specifically, ask about the encryption, the access controls, the data retention policy. So a fun little fact as Anne's typing that question up is on some vendors' sites, when you're using the tools, you can click a button. It'll have like a little widget and you can delete the data that you inputted into it and it's gone. Some vendors don't have that option. So you do need to know like where your data is going, where it's stored, how long it's going to be there, who else can tap into it. And if you do have ultimately the control in deleting all your data. Another thing is who owns the data you input into the system? And then furthermore, what rights does that vendor have over it? Because you also want to know that, right? And they're very different. They are not the same. I would caution everyone to treat every single vendor completely differently because there's no rhyme or reason. Everyone has kind of their own thing going for them. If you're, you know,
Ooh.
if you're a global company or if you have anything to do with Europe, does the solution comply with relevant privacy regulations, specifically GDPR or CCPA? And I say Europe because they have some of the strictest rules. So if you have an IT company, based in Europe, those are the questions that they're going to want to know. And coming from a company that was headquartered in Europe, anytime I wanted to roll out a tool, quite literally, they would give me a list of everything that could go wrong with that tool. And I would have to explain what would happen or what we would do from our end for everything that could potentially go wrong. And I do feel like even if you're not doing that on behalf of the company, you should be thinking about that as a user. Like, here's what can go wrong, and here's what I am going to do if those things happen. Because I would hate if you started trying a tool and then something happened, and then that's how you learn about these regulations and privacy concerns. Just be proactive about it. Are there safeguards in place to prevent data leakage or misuse?
Okay.
How can we make sure AI respects our privacy?
Yes.
Also, you're looking at the worst iterations of generative AI that will ever exist. So, a question that I love to ask vendors is, can you give me an example of a time that your product did not mitigate bias, and what are you going to do in the future to ensure that doesn't happen again? Because it's happening.
Ooh. Give me an example of when your product failed
To
to
mitigate bias.
mitigate bias and what you've changed.
Yes. And what you've changed to ensure the likelihood of that, I mean, I don't want to say doesn't happen again, but is minimalized,
Okay.
minimized.
Okay. To minimize. Yeah.
And there's tons of studies out there, right? I think that applying some pressure to these vendors when it comes to the sustainability of the tool and making sure it's not just one more tool that you're putting in your tech stack that's not going to play nice with your other tools. That's half of it. And then the other half is truly the inclusivity, right? So can you tell me a little bit about your hiring practices and what the diversity combination of your engineers are? Because if you don't have diverse employees creating this technology, then it's not actually for everyone. If I were to ask you, Anne, like what your definition of bias is, and you were to ask me, we would have two different answers. And that's the whole point, is it's a lived experience that every individual has that's unique to them. And so making sure that they're represented is the only way that you can make this truly inclusive for everyone.
So would you say a tool Okay, give us an example of when a tool is influenced by a workforce that's not diverse versus a tool that's influenced by a workforce that is diverse. It has a variety of lived experiences among its staff.
Like an example of an output that you might expect from each of them?
Yes.
Okay, so MIT did a study on this too. So I will say I'm not an expert by any means. Please go look at this. But yeah, so MIT actually came up with or they conducted research, and it did find that generative AI applications, and they didn't name the specific tools, they just said in general, and I think that they pulled from at least 30, I want to say closer to 50 tools though, and they all found that people with darker complexions, they like the generative AIs that they were using, or the LLMs rather that they were using, weren't representing people with darker complexions. And I think that study is really important because it does a better job about breaking down like what it said and why specifically. But I'll give you two examples. So if you have a diverse workforce that are creating technology that is truly inclusive, then the outputs will be tailored. So Gemini does a really good job at this. I was trying to think of like who I can call out and be confident about it. So Gemini does a good job about, if you ask Gemini, you know, what are ways that I can mitigate bias, and how can I make sure that my tools are for everyone? It will spit out an answer that consists of something along the lines of, you always need to constantly monitor what you're saying and look it over regardless of what your tools you're using to create this. And I think that even just having that warning is like, okay, great, we're on the right track. Because we're not going to be perfect, and but we do need to get better very quickly when it comes to this. So I think that any AI output that says something like that is very helpful. Also, so you asked for one good example. I would say the bad example is, can I ding on your one of your vendors?
Yes, go ahead.
I don't like ChatGPT because it will just give me like when you're generating images and I asked for, you know, a picture of Santa Claus, it will go out of its way to give me anybody other than like the stereotypical Santa Claus. And it's like, well, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why are you just, why don't you ask me what I want to see, or like what I'm looking for? Or, you know, I'm telling you what to create, and it will come up with like the weirdest Santa Clauses. And it's like, why don't you just ask me what specifically I'm looking for and then
Yeah.
tailor that again? It's almost like
Yes.
they're trying to be so inclusive that they're not listening. They're just kind of like,
Yeah.
here's diversity. And it's like, but do you know if that's
Yeah.
diversity? Is that diversity?
Yeah.
Um, and I also find with ChatGPT, I also have to add a lot more, like in my inputs, I have to say a lot more things like, um, look at this blog from multiple people's perspective. Is there
Mhm.
anything tone wise that could be suggestive of negativity or sarcasm? Is
Oh.
there anything that could be offensive for XYZ audience? If we're talking about, I'll give you a great example. If we're talking about like a Sephora or an Ulta, a lot of their audience members are teenagers and young adults. So if I'm writing the content using AI for a Sephora or an Ulta, and I'm trying to market, a sultry eyeshadow palette, right? Very possible. They're a makeup company. If I say something along the lines of, and try out their new sexy goddess eye palette makeup, well, now I'm like sexualizing, their audience, and that's a
Sure.
no-no, and you don't want to do that. So it
Sure.
seems silly, but these things really do matter, and you don't want to risk using these tools hastily and not really figuring out what matters to the vendor and their founders, and then learning that maybe they don't care as much as you care, and there's not this equilibrium.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
have to make a little longer.
Talisha, I'm loving what you've shared here, and I'm curious. Can you say more? So that's an example of diversity as a filter rather than integrated functionality. Diversity as a filter rather than integrated functionality. So Ashley, what does that mean to you?
I was gonna say my brain. I'm getting over a sickness, so my brain's a little mushy. So like, let me look at this one more time and read
Diversity
it.
as a filter rather than integrated.
Oh, okay. So what my interpretation of this is, I think specifically when I was talking about ChatGPT and how it was giving me different Santa Clauses, it was like screaming
Oh,
about diversity rather than like integrating it into their actual product offering and
Yeah.
making sure that it's not just this one specific case and they're not saying like, we're diverse, look at all these Santa Clauses. And
Right.
in, and instead they're like, Santa Claus can be anyone, anywhere, anytime. What do you think of when you think of Santa Claus? That's how I take that question.
So, okay, perfect. So when we're in conversations with potential vendors, the question about the diversity of their own workforce is clearly critical. How do we also get at, okay, so maybe you meet that litmus test. You've got a diverse workforce. How do we learn about what the programming is on the back end so that it's not that it's going to come up as diversity as a filter rather than an integrated function? How do we learn from them? What are the questions, the actual, things that we need to probe on to find out in general, are our results going to be less biased without a lot of extra nudging that our staff may not be trained yet on?
Yeah. So the question, one of the first questions that I ask vendors is the data primarily public domain, proprietary, or a mix? Because this immediately impacts biases and output types.
Okay.
Depending on what you're rolling AI out for and who you're rolling it out for, whether it's yourself or a company, I would say, how do I want to word this? I knew that rolling out AI, I wanted it to be uniform. I wanted to be able to control what the outputs are and what it knew. And so I went for Jasper because I can attach my Google Drive to Jasper and say, here are all the things I want you to know. And if it's things that I wrote, I know me as a user. I'm ongoing with my learning and education as far as bias and um, generative AI knowledge goes. So I know that when I'm writing things, I am double checking everything that I'm writing. I'm getting second, third, fourth opinions. So if I'm putting everything that I've already written and checked off into a Google Drive and I'm giving it to Jasper and saying, like, this is what I want Jasper to be trained on, it's probably not as likely that it's going to give me a bad output, and it's not going to give me something that's dangerous as far as bias goes. If I'm using OpenAI, unless it's my custom OpenAI GPT, I don't have that control.
Yeah. Yep.
Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. Do you know, have you had connection yet with the woman who created Chat Black GPT?
Yes.
Yes. I'm fascinated by this. I would need to learn more about it, and I want to get the tool, the platform, and her out in front of our nonprofit community as well, because the thing that, is so tricky is here we all are in the nonprofit space. The thing that we have is trust. That's it. You don't get a new car, you don't get a new house, you don't get a new title. You get a relationship with an organization that extends your value system by making the world a better place in a particular way that you want to. And we may be now using tools that are biased in a way that are exactly the opposite of the whole mission of our organization. And I would love to have more people know that there's a platform out here that will mitigate. It will inherently mitigate some of the bias that we see most frequently. Like, to your point with OpenAI, I still can't, if I don't specify that a woman CEO, an image of a woman CEO, if I just ask for that, it'll always send me back a white person, a white woman.
And
Never
that's why it's
said.
so important to press whenever you are asking these vendors, like, what are your employees' demographics made up of, right? Because
Yes.
you can change your hiring practices. I know it's less glamorous than putting out a LinkedIn job alert and having thousands of people apply, and you have to actually like go seek out women of color, but like it actually pays off.
Yeah,
So you
absolutely.
should be asking the vendors to do this. It's really not that hard. It's a convenience thing. There are plenty of women of color who are more than qualified for these jobs that should absolutely be building this technology and have a voice in the room and not just specific to women panels.
Yes,
Where the best
exactly.
for.
Hey, Deb, tell us about that link while we go on to the next question that we can ask vendors. And hi, Deb, it's good to see you. I'm so glad you're here. Anyone else, let us know like where you're tuning in from, where you are in your AI journey. We love to know who's on the call, and we can customize our conversation based on that. And anyone, if you have questions about hiring a vendor in the AI space, let us know because we're going down a list, and Ashley's going to get us all set up here. What else should we have in mind when we're selecting a vendor?
Oh my gosh. I mentioned this, but I feel like it could be overstated. So I'll say it again. I'm a marketer with 10 years of marketing experience. And I say that because I've played with lots of tools in my lifetime that have not been specifically AI tools.
Mhm.
So in a way, almost treat these AI tools like they're, HubSpot and Salesforce and just a tool in general. Don't add it to your tech stack unless you're taking away some other tools, right? Like if your
Mm.
tech stack is 10 tools and you're adding 3 AI tools, you should realistically be getting rid of some regular tools then, because you shouldn't be getting one tool for every problem that you have. Now, the flip side of that is I would say I'll compare it to like, e-commerce vendors. You shouldn't be going after like these monolithic systems. Like, please don't use a chat GPT or a Gemini to try and solve all of your problems, because these tools are very good for specific things. And then some of the features they have are not that great.
Yeah.
Um, so I always like to, caution people that before you're picking any AI tool, not a question for the vendor, but a question for yourself or your team is, can you all agree on the problem that you're trying to solve using generative AI? Because maybe the
Yes.
problem won't be solved using generative AI, and you need to realistically be set up for that and understand it.
Yes. That seems to be the biggest thing that I've experienced with tech rollouts is that the lack of agreement slash buy-in to what is the problem that we're actually trying to solve. And when we don't agree on that from jump, the results are certainly like varied, right? You're
Yes.
going to have a CEO who this is their like pet project, and you're going to have frontline people who are like, why are we even doing this? This is dumb.
Yes. And a lot of the
So
times, the people that are buying into these products are not the ones that hold the budget power. So then from a vendor perspective, they need to go after the AI enthusiasts that are excited and going to help them be the practitioners and really sell their tools internally. But then also from a company and a user perspective, you're going to run out of steam very fast if you try to go at this alone, or you don't find your people that are also equally excited. And you don't have to have people that are on your team excited. It actually works better if you pick somebody from every single different department, and then rally them together, because a lot more things get done when you have a community of yes people than no.
absolutely. So that I want to add to this slide and say to talk a little bit about how because so much of the work that we're doing in this space, I'm often thinking about individual employees even more than the enterprise, and how this era is going to affect all of our careers, right? Like, first of all, quality of life first. But if you think about, if you end up being the person who's supposed to pick a vendor, what are some of the steps that you should be taking with yourself and with maybe another AI enthusiast, or grabbing your executive director or your CEO or your board president? How do you begin having those internal conversations about essentially governance, but what's under
Mhm.
this is, hiring a vendor? Where do you start if you're a nonprofit employee and it seems like somebody's got to deal with this whole AI thing?
Someone's got to do it. You
Somebody's got
guys
to do
got to
it.
do it. I would say, okay, so if we zoom out real quick, picking a vendor, an AI vendor for a specific problem, I use Mac, right? Like, I'm a MacBook person and I work remotely. If I want to change my computer to not be a Mac and let's just say Windows, then I probably wouldn't change my MacBook to a Windows and start going into work in an office, because then I'm changing my
Ah,
workflow and the product, right? And like, that's way out of my comfort
mm,
zone. I'm probably not going to enjoy my learning experience learning about a Windows computer when I had a MacBook computer if I'm not in my element, in my safe place in my home, and I'm in an office because I'm not used to it. So, and if you don't get this, weird example I'm getting, I'm saying change your workflow or change the product, but don't change both. So I think
Don't
that
change
the
both.
initial, yes, you don't, I mean, just don't change both of them at the same time. It's less approachable. People need to feel comfortable, and you can't underestimate the element of fun.
Yes.
So if it's not enjoyable, people aren't going to want to learn about it.
Yeah.
So the questions I would start asking are, one, what is the business's problem? Right? Like, not what's Ashley's problem. What is the business's problem that we are facing right now that we all uniformly need to solve for?
Mm-hmm.
Define that problem. And then from there, as an individual, I can say, okay, this quarter we have a revenue problem. What can I in my marketing role do to solve that XYZ? And then somebody from sales gives what they can do for that one problem. And you get this beautiful, like, little unicorn effect of everybody taking off like their interdepartmental, hats, and just coming
Uh-huh.
together for the business and looking at holistically what the business needs. That's a
Yes.
really great place to start.
So having people take off their departmental hat to look at the enterprise, but be able to inform that conversation with their actual understanding of how the work gets done.
Yes. Yes,
Are
absolutely.
are there specific roles in, let's just say, a typical organization that you feel like are imperative in conversations about how are we going to use AI in our organization? Can it
Yes.
come from anywhere? Does it
Yes.
need to come from the bottom? Does it need to come from the top? Yes, talk to me a little bit about that.
I'm like, yes, yes, yes. Um, it can come from anywhere. It should come from anywhere. I will say having, board of director or C-suite buy-in makes it a heck of a lot easier. But I truly do think that it can come from anywhere. It should come from everywhere. And oh man, what was the last part that you said? I'm sorry, I got so excited.
Um,
I was
I
like, yes, supporting you, and then just got carried away.
yes. So, I'll give you an example of kind of where one of the thoughts that I've had is the opportunity for people who are AI enthusiasts to really elevate and accelerate their career by being that person who raises their hand and says, not only do I want the juicy gizmo, like I want to help us get a vendor, cool, awesome, dope, shiny object. People are going to get to do new stuff. But I also understand that while we're all starting to implement these new tools, we need some guardrails. We need
Okay.
some rules of the road. And to be the person who's willing to do that kind of go slow to go fast work seems to me like an opportunity for example, to really break down some of the hierarchies in organizations. Like, truth be told, in my opinion, the C-suite execs are probably the least qualified. Okay, good. I'm not going out too far on a limb here to evaluate some of the governance aspects because they are in a different workflow than
1 million
everybody
percent.
else is. They're not using it because they don't do the same kind of work on a daily basis as the people
Right.
who are implementing these tools. And so for me, it's an opportunity for somebody who historically hasn't had power and proximity to power to
Yes.
really become a center of gravity in their organization and to be in those rooms and spaces with the C-suite folks and the people with budget authority and the bosses, and maybe, launch a new aspect of their career for a while, for a few years. It's likely that there will be AI, this, that, or the other in organizations. It's going to take a couple of years and then everybody will be the AI person.
Yes.
But talk a little bit about, getting in how somebody who's currently an enthusiastic user, maybe the people who are, like you said, we're out here, we're using the tools, we're not even publicizing it because of, we might be saying to our bosses, hey, yo, I can do this thing 60% faster. And then you're going to get another project and you don't want one.
Yes. Yes.
Or, hey, I can do this thing. And it wasn't that hard to do it better than I did it, which then implies maybe I wasn't all that great to begin with. And heaven forbid that you then become the person who others look upon as, well, let's see, Ashley decided to tell the CEO that AI is great and now we're all losing our jobs. How do you be that person who's enthusiastic and be helpful in that role while avoiding some of these, like, kind of darker spots.
Yeah. So I 100% I think that everybody should have an AI task force of some kind in their company. And like I said, this does not need to start in a specific team. Um, it doesn't need to be specific people. It works a lot better if you're coming from different departments and it's made up of different backgrounds. And and also, not that this is like why anyone should want to take the AI initiative necessarily, but this is a really great career advancement because you're going to get more visibility, like you said, with the C suite and board of directors, but you're also going to be future proofing your job because you're having these conversations at such a micro level that when people, naturally will start evolving to being more accepting of AI, they're going to need the practitioners that have talked about this, have gotten through these issues and had these conversations to really come in and take over. And if you don't believe me, look at Google and Amazon. They are starting to put out, I think it's called AI content writer. And some of the description is, you need to be able to use AI, multiple LLMs specifically to create content about AI. It's like,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
so we're already seeing these job openings start to come up and pop up a lot more frequently. So um my biggest I guess advice would be you need to find a few people that are really interested about doing this because maybe 3 of those people are down to take AI courses and go
Yeah.
and learn. Maybe some of them don't have that extra time, but they're willing to try the tools and video themselves trying the tools so that you can see like where the shortcomings are, where the successes are, because that's a large part of trying these tools is learning what they're good at and what they're not good at. And I think you actually said this, and to your point, just to like elevate it a little bit more, AI does a really good job about shining a light on what you're doing well and what you're not doing well. So if you have
Yes.
people that are really, really good at their jobs, those are the people that I would try to go to first and rally
Yeah.
and bring them into a group because you have to be really good at doing your job in order to build on top of that. If you're not doing a good job already at whatever you're doing, enhancing it with AI is not actually going to enhance it. It's just going to bring it to light further.
Right. So, okay, so here's like if you're multitasking, come back to us because I want to share what I feel like is the dopest way to start with being the AI person in your organization and building toward a governance structure that will help you build stakeholder trust. So I always say find an AI framework somewhere. I recommend the one at fundraising.ai because it's custom, for the nonprofit sector, but it's also a lot of them are very like they're versatile. But grab one, put a meeting on your calendar with just yourself and title it, AI governance. And this is the first meeting of your AI task force. It's you learning about what a framework looks like. The second meeting is you and somebody else who's really good at their current job, or somebody who's like salivating over AI and they constantly are talking about it and you're like nerding out together. And then maybe there's a third person. And then maybe you all do like a brown bag or a presentation or something, but it can literally, because the practice of taking it as your own personal responsibility is a muscle that we all need to be building, because no matter what framework. Hi, Aria, how are you? Oh my gosh, miss you. What are you up to? I want to see you. Come to our thing on Saturday. Um, yes, yes, ADHD culture. I love Aria. He's so funny. So one time I was in a meeting. This is what, to your point about being this all has to be fun, is we were in some meeting talking about something boring, and Aria had like a hysterical cartoony voice on his microphone or something, and so everything he said was in a cartoon voice, and we loved that. No,
Yes.
Aria, we love the distraction.
Yes.
But I
Yeah.
really recommend something as simple as just put a meeting on your calendar, and it's you and yourself, and it's delving into an AI framework. It's, going on Perplexity AI and learning what some of the terms mean. It's, it's taking that framework, putting it into Claude or Gemini or Pi or ChatGPT, having a conversation about that framework. And now you've got the ball rolling. And to Ashley's point, this is not only, I was thinking about it in like, there's an abundance approach and there's a little bit of a scarcity thing too here. So the abundance is like, you have a beautiful career ahead of you if you have some enthusiasm around AI and you're willing to be vulnerable and build in public. We're all going to make mistakes. I am currently saying things that I will probably regret in a couple of days. Right? Like, it's vulnerable to be out here talking about AI stuff when we know everything is going to change and some of it's going to bite us in the butt, right? Someday I'm going to be really sorry that I've been out here telling everybody that they need to use generative AI. I know that day is going to come.
No, not at all.
Well, it'll be short-lived. There'll be a
It will
moment.
be.
There'll be a moment where somebody I really care about
Yes.
is emphatic about
Yes.
it's evil.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, I do like to caution people. It's kind of just like anything. I hate to say it's like anything else, but it's kind of like, when crypto was in a bull market a couple years ago, never in a million years would I go up to my grandma and be like, Grams, Bitcoin, you got to go invest, right? Like, I know my audience. So, like, it's kind of the same with generative AI. I think know your audience, know what their capabilities are. And I used to be very like gung ho. I was like, everyone should try this, like, go, go, go. But you do, whenever you are the yes person and whenever you are like the champion of AI, that's a lot of pressure because you're going to have, unless you are controlling the learning experience of those users, whatever their experience is, they're going to relate to you. So I would caution people instead of saying, go try AI. I would just say, like, maybe it's not for you. Maybe you benchmark yourself and see what your capabilities are. And you're just really honest and humble with yourself about that. And you see if it is right for you. Like, that's a good starting point, too. One of the first use cases I did was telling ChatGPT what's in my fridge and having it give me multiple recipes based on the ingredients in my fridge so I didn't have to go grocery shopping. That served no purpose for my job. It did not get me promoted, but it was so fun, right? And it actually solved a problem because I didn't want to go to the grocery store that day. So it gave me immediate value. I was able to test the tool and I was able to check the accuracy of it, right? So just start
That's
small.
my number one, like, neutral, safe zone use cases. Take pictures of your closet, ask what to wear, take pictures of your fridge. And it's also the way to make your money back on if you subscribe to any of the platforms that are like $20 a month. I for sure know that I can't go to the grocery store and spend $20 and have anything remotely resembling what a dinner might look like. But for $20 a month, I have a little machine that can tell me what to make based on what I have in my fridge and my pantry, like, the totally non-matching things that are left in there. But I absolutely think that's an important point. It's like we're all accustomed to the possibility of these conversations with people who look at us like we have three heads. A lot of times that's okay, right? But sometimes it's really vulnerable. So if you are, for example, an executive director or a major gift fundraiser in a nonprofit, and you're talking to your board about data privacy and security, they're also going to be having conversations about how are you using AI. I want everybody to be equipped with their talking points about how we are responsibly using AI to protect our data and our data security and privacy. So it's like you both have to be able to indicate how you are using these tools, because sidebar, a lot of us are worried that our constituents will be upset that we're using AI. And what I encourage people to consider is exactly the opposite, that we only have a few more months before most of our constituents, certainly our board members, let's say, who also own and run businesses and communities and, busy, active lives, and are also doing the reconfiguration of their lives and their companies in order to integrate AI, they're going to turn to us and expect that we are implementing ubiquitous technology in order for us to secure stakeholder trust, which, we would require in order for people to do the absolutely irrational act of giving us money. In order for us to protect that, we always have to demonstrate that we're a well-run business. And so we wouldn't say, nah, we're not using email. Now we're not getting everybody, we're not going to use a CRM, but multiply that times 1,000. We're going to need to be able to share what our adoption plan is. And along with that, immediately we need to have our talking points on AI governance, because those things that are going to come up are going to be, I actually think that some of those conversations will be the defining moments for leadership careers, where you had the conversation about AI and you were either able to inspire somebody's trust, or you were backpedaling and maybe even personally embarrassed by not being able to, somebody you've worked with for 10 years who respects you, not being able to give them a satisfactory answer on what you're doing with their data now that you're using AI. So I don't know where I was going with that, but it's the mix of the personal and the enterprise, I think.
Yes. And I think, and I was following you.
Okay, good.
I think too, just an example of kind of what you're saying is, you can touch on every aspect of a marketing team, or any team rather, and find a use case for AI, but maybe, you know, let's just take customers, right? Everyone's really protective, as they should be, of the customers that they have, regardless of what vertical segment, whatever. Instead of saying like, okay, we're going to input our customer data, because I don't think you should. Um,
No.
instead of trying to figure out a way to compile customer data and do something with the personal information, why don't you solve a different problem that also has to do with your customers? A great use case is, it's really hard to get customer testimonials. So why don't you use AI and say, here is the type of customer I'm looking for. Here's the type of quote I want. Can you figure out a way to assemble 3 different quotes that a vendor of this specificity could say about my product? And then you send that to your customer and you say, hey, is there any way I can get you get a quote for this blog, this article, whatever? Here are 3 examples of what I'm looking for, if you'd rather just pick from one of these 3. And then that customer, all they have to do is, yes, option 2 is great, thanks. They don't have to write it. They don't have to, you're doing all of the thinking and working for them. It's still solving a use case, and you're still using your customer's data. You're just not inputting it and putting it at risk. Because it's honestly like telling someone a secret and you're like, please don't say anything. That's what you're doing.
Right. Well, and it's so perfect kind of parallel to that for like a nonprofit marketer would be, let's say you're writing a story on a gift and you need a quote from the donor, and the donor isn't somebody who cares about that kind of stuff, but you're not going to write that story without a quote from the donor, or it won't be as powerful. It wouldn't take long to spin up a little persona, kick out 3 or 4 quotes that the person might be likely to say, and then send it to them and say, of these 2 or of these 3, which sounds closest? Do you have any edits? And get it approved and keep on trucking. Or if you're writing an article where you need a quote from your president who doesn't have time to do that, like doing some of these things where you can just move the ball forward, let people know that you care for them and you understand that they're busy people. Perfect example of how to use it. I wanted to, in our last couple of minutes, I wanted to put this QR code and this website up. All of our recordings of these sessions are here at this site. And we also have our events posted here to RSVP. So this weekend we have, we host something called Weekend GPT Jams. And typically we talk about something related to GPTs, but often we also talk about just other hot topics in the world of AI. And this Saturday is going to be a knowledge exchange for people who are consultants bringing AI into their world, those who are specifically consultants in the AI space, and those who are thinking about doing that. We're going to trade stories on customer pain points, on governance, on maybe we'll even pool some of our decks that we've already created. We'll talk about offers and pricing and different industries. We'll talk about whatever everybody who's there wants to talk about. It's just an open convo. And we're doing something every Saturday. And then our recordings for this series on governance will be up at this website as well. So folks, Aria especially, thank you for joining us. Let me turn this off. Ashley, it has been so great. to hang out with you and learn from you. And I'm excited, super excited about your community opening up in what, less than 20 days, 19 days?
Yes, the countdown is on.
And so, folks, let me put that link back up because this is an incredible opportunity. Where did it go? Good afternoon. Where did I put it?
It's gettheprompt.com, and it's
Get,
just a wait list. You sign up.
yeah,
You will get an email on May 1st explaining more, but yes, I'm very excited. It's there's so much. There's so much that this community entails, and my whole point was making everything accessible. So you really do have a ton of resources for $20 a month. You can get in and get out whenever you want.
yeah,
It's just there to establish trust and support and really let you dabble in whatever you want and take the heaviest part of the load, in my
yeah.
opinion, when it comes to research out of the way.
And what I love about what you've done here is you've created a safe space for people to come in and ask the kind of questions that they probably don't want to ask at work.
Yes.
If you've been charged with finding the vendor, you probably don't want to turn around and there's nobody for you to ask, well, what should I ask the vendors? What are our specs? Ask the other, 300 people in the community on May 1st or so. I'm sure you have a lot of people who are on the wait list and who are chomping at the bit to chime in. So you'll have people who you can ask questions like that. And community is everything with AI. You need people because your friends are probably sick of you already. Your family is probably done hearing about AI. Like,
If they even
done.
understand what you're talking about. That's
They
like a
don't
really
even know.
great like challenge for everyone. Go home and tell your parents about AI. And if they understand it, you are good to go.
Yes, you have to have a use case that matters. The one that I got my dad in with was how to look up information about vintage lawnmower parts.
I love
That
that.
got him on board. So,
That's amazing.
Ashley, thank you. Those of you in the audience today, thank you for being here. If you're on the replay, thank you too. Reach out to Ashley. She's an incredible resource. Check out Get the Prompt. And let's just all keep talking about governance. It's so incredibly important, even more important potentially than all the benefits that we're going to get from adopting these tools is how we're going to use them to grow our stakeholder trust. Ashley, you hang out for a second. I'm going to kick us off of the live, and everybody stay in touch, and thanks for being here. Take care. Have a good day.